make a work of art that really focuses on contrast and on value. So, value is the lightest light to the darkest dark and all the shades in between. Contrast is a principle of design. Let's see, over here. It's under emphasis. Emphasis is where does your eye go in your artwork? So, contrast is when you have areas that are very different, whether they are very big areas versus very small areas, very dark areas versus very light areas. We are going to be using contrast using dark and light and value when we create a silhouette of a wolf howling at the moon. And if you don't know what a silhouette is when the area behind an object is brighter and it's kind of making the object close to us all shaded and dark. So if you've ever looked at the moon at nighttime, the trees all look black, right? Because the sky is brighter than those trees. They are kind of what we call backlit. The light is behind them. So again, we'll be using value, light to dark, and contrast to bring emphasis to our little wolf howling at the moon. Now, if you do not want to draw a wolf, maybe you can look up a different animal that might be looking up at the moon, a polar bear, or a deer, a rabbit, a dog. I mean, any animal you could make silhouetted looking up at the moon. Now, whether you're working on paper or clicky.com, turn your page so that it's in what we call a portrait layout, where it's taller than it is long, a nice vertical layout. There is my background. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to think about where we're going to place our line for our composition. Our composition is how everything's laid out on our page. I think I want a moon up here, a little rocky cliff over here with maybe a couple trees, and Mr. Wolf howling up at that moon. I could even have what we call a reference photo. A reference photo is when you're looking at pictures online of what something looks like. Not all of us know what a wolf looks like howling at the moon, or a polar bear if you're doing that. No, I do not want to look at a wolf spider. No and thank you. Wolf howling at the moon. Images. Now look at all of this inspiration. Such good contrast. The darkest black with some of the lightest lights. All those shades and values in between. Oh, look how cute. So there we go, some reference pictures to help us out as we draw. And I'm getting some good ideas for cool colors that I might put in my sky with some stars. And look at those black trees, the black ground, and the black wolf. Again, that's what we call a silhouette. So, that being said, let's go over here to clicky.com. I'm going to start by lightly making a drawing, sketching out where I want my moon. I'm going to cheat and use the tool shape, the shape tool I mean on Clicky. Again, let me put it here. I'm going to make it a little wider. There we go. A nice moon, and I'll put my wolf here. I think I'm going to sketch out the ground before I continue. Let's see. I want a little bit of what we call asymmetry, meaning it's not perfectly balanced on both sides. I'm having higher cliff on this side, and it kind of the hill kind of tapers off down to the bottom of my page here. So I don't have this perfect balance right now. I'm going to draw my little wolf now. Let's see. Now again, there's no shame in looking at photos online to get an idea of what that wolf is going to look like up close. We see his little muzzle, his nose, his mouth open, howling at that moon, his long skull, his ears back, this rounded chest, because wolves, large dogs have a big chest to fill, big lungs because they run a lot. They need lots of air in those lungs. His thin legs, and he's sitting, so his hind legs are kind of curved. So we're going to go ahead and start sketching that shape. This will be the most difficult part of our drawing, and you can totally do it. So I'm going to zoom in on my drawing so I can really see what I'm working with here. And here we go. I'm actually going to go on to a black. I'm going to start by sketching where I want these parts of his body. So I think his head is going to go here, I think his little snout is going to come up and over. So let's start with those two shapes. And if you look at where they are, the size is very important. This is going to be his head with his little ear. I'm going to have his chest come over and down. Now, don't feel like you have to sketch this with me. I'm feeling this out and I'm showing you how I think while I do it, and then we'll do it together. His foot will be there. See, I might have made his head too big. His mouth will be open. I don't want you to feel like your drawing has to be perfect right away, because drawing an animal and the proportions of that animal body can be very tricky. Like, I think I definitely made his head a bit too big. So I want you to not be too hard on yourself, and definitely don't draw too dark. If you draw too dark on paper, it'll be very difficult to erase. Here on Clicky, it doesn't matter how dark I draw, I can erase it, of course. It's a computer. But when I'm working with my pencil on paper, I'm barely pressing. I don't want to press too hard and then have to erase and have trouble with it. So this time around, I'm going to go ahead and make the oval for his head. I'm going to try and make it a little smaller. I think it's always our tendency to make the head the biggest part of a human or an animal's body. But in reality, the head of a human or an animal is truly not that large compared to the rest of their shape, their form. All right, so I've got an oval kind of pointed toward the moon, and this rectangular shape that's a little smaller at the top, that's going to be his snout, his little nose. I'm going to have another one coming over and connecting, smaller, because it's the bottom of his jaw. The bottom of a dog's mouth is going to be smaller than the top part. It's just how dogs and wolves are built. All right, so I think that's probably about the right size for his head. And then I'm going to have that triangular ear come over and down. I'm going to remind myself his ear's kind of pointed backwards. If I wasn't looking at a silhouette or a shadow of a wolf, basically, the dark, hidden body of the wolf, I would probably see his eyes were closed, looking up at that moon. Well, I guess he wouldn't be looking if his eyes are closed. His face pointed up at that moon, eyes closed, howling, just listening, just listening. All right, so I've got his oval for his head, the rectangular pointed shapes for his top part of his mouth and his bottom part of his mouth, and a triangular kind of point, almost like an arrow, tip of an arrow coming off the back of his head. Now for his chest, this is the bottom of his mouth. His neck and chest are going to come swooping out off of that shape, curve out and in, because remember, we want that feeling of his chest to be like a real wolf, where his rib cage kind of takes up a large amount of his chest, and then it tucks in. He's a trim wolf. He runs a lot, so he's not going to have a big fat belly. It's going to curve over and in. All right, so you're going to have that curved shape. And you see I've made many lines. I'm kind of feeling out where I want my drawing to go. And then you might not see both legs. Maybe one leg is right in front of the other. So from about here is where his arm or front leg would start. We're going to see it come forward and then kind of connect. Maybe he's standing on this rock here, perched right at the edge. But he's got this skinny looking little leg. They've got these long, thin limbs. They're very, very fast. So don't forget to curve out and over for that paw. And we'll color that in later. All right, now for his back. We're going to start not from the top of his skull, because his head will be a little higher than the top of his back. We're going to come in from where that ear is a bit, and we're going to curve over. His shoulder will bump up a little bit, and then it'll curve over and down for his back. So it looks really silly right now, doesn't it? Curve. So we have a little bump, and then we're going to curve over and down. You might not like your drawing at this point, and that's okay. Many, many, many of my drawings I'm very unhappy with until I adjust and tweak them here and there until I'm happy with them. Sketching is all about visual problem solving. You're working through your drawing, trying to figure out what shapes you like, what shapes you don't, why do I like this shape, why do I not like this shape, how is this successful, how is this not successful. Art is, as Albert Einstein, I believe, once said, creativity is intelligence having fun. You're using your brain right now. You're comparing lines, you're comparing shapes, and you're having a dialogue in your head right now. You're talking to yourself. and thinking about how to make your drawing successful. Now, if a dog is sitting or a wolf, his back leg would be curved and then his paw bent out. So we're going to draw that kind of C shape right here. There's his hind leg, hind meaning back, and then we'll, oopsies, and then I'm going to curve over and down. Maybe his paw will be sitting on that rock right there and we'll see the top of it. The last thing I'll need to sketch will be his tail, and I'm going to curve it a little bit and give it a little zigzag kind of action there to show some of the fluffy hairs on the back of his tail. Don't make it too long and don't make it too short. Wolves don't have short tails, but they don't have incredibly long tails either. I actually might have made his tail a little too long, so I'm going to erase and try again. I think I'm going to make it a little bit shorter, but still have those little floofs of hair right there. Now, I need to go ahead and put in the contrast. We said this was a silhouette, and again, a silhouette is when the light is behind the objects and the objects look very dark, almost black or black in our artwork. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in the color I want for the background. Value, again, is the lightest light to the darkest dark. I want my moon to be a bright white, and then I'm going to pick purples and blues that go darker and darker in my night sky. And I'll save that black for just our silhouette of our wolf and our, what's it called? Our little cliff, and maybe a couple of trees I'll put over here in the end. Now, let's start with some color. I think, let's see, I'm going to find like a purpley blue, what we call kind of an indigo color. And I'm going to get my fuzzy brush. If you're using crayons or markers, it's easy enough to, excuse me.
Good morning, lovely Lincoln staff. I hope you all enjoyed your weekend. Let's have a productive week. Please report to duty. Thank you.
Well, I'm being summoned. I'll have to finish this up very quickly. You can, what's it called? You can blend your color very easily, guys, whether you're using crayons, markers, or Clicky. So I'm going to put my opacity at 100. That's how see-through. I don't want it to be see-through at all. I'm going to put some dark color further away from the moon. The moon and everything close to it will be darkest. And everything furthest away from the moon will be dark, and everything closer to the moon will be lighter. So I'm going ahead and I'm throwing down some color. I'm going to blend this out, so I'm not too concerned about how much is blending and how much is not. I'm going to put some color in here. Whoops, let's do no blending for a second. I want to get that color in there. I'm just throwing down that color. I remember value dark to light, so I'm going to have deeper indigo down here, and then I'm going to blend it up lighter and lighter as I get closer to the moon and higher in my sky. And I'll work on blending it as I go. I'm kind of covering up my wolf a little bit. I could have used layers on Clicky to make this easier for me, but I don't want to confuse some of you guys. But if you want to play with layers, go for it. Maybe you want to do this, this value of dark blue to lighter blue on a different layer so that you don't have to worry about touching your wolf or coloring over your wolf at all. But of course, if you're working with crayons or pencils or markers, you're going to have to think about how to color around this carefully. You don't want to ruin your wolf, your sketch, by coloring too much, too dark. Let me zoom out now. Again, I'm working quickly because I do have to go out to duty in just a minute. I'm throwing that color around my moon. And I'm getting lighter and lighter as I go. I want that moon to feel like it's glowing. So I'm going to even color a little bit right on top of it with the purpley indigo color, and then I'll blend some extra white on top. Oops, maybe not that far. Put some extra white here. Hello, glowy moon. Now I want to go full in and blend. I just want to get these colors really blended together. So take your time getting your color where you want it to be. On Clicky to blend, I went to opacity of almost nothing, 3, and blending very strong at 100. And then I'm just going back and forth, and it's slowly kind of moving those colors into each other. Soft hazy moon. Maybe it's a hazy night. Let's see. Maybe I'll blend it a little better here. Alrighty. Now I could take my time and truly blend it magnificently and very, very well. And you can have your value drawing be as intense as you want. Maybe you want it to be darker down here than I made it. That is your choice. Do it if you'd like. What? I'm on the wrong color. There we go. All right, time for black, friends. I want this silhouette of this wolf to be super intense. I'm going to use the fill tool where I can. My little paint bucket. Whoopsies. See, I'm going to have to go in with my brush quite a bit, and that's okay. I'm going to get off the fuzzy brush. We're just going to go through and crisp up our drawing again. We did all the hard work. We made our drawing of our wolf. We know what shapes we have. Our sketch might be hidden a little bit, but we know what shapes are there. And now this is the easy part, just coloring our shapes in black, because it is, again, a silhouette. We want high contrast. Very, very black against that light color back there. Mr. Wolf, howling at the moon. Broaden his chest a little bit. And let's get his tail going again. Swoop, 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 get those little fluffies. My dog actually has those same fluffs on his tail when he's sitting and it curves. His tail kind of curls up just like that. Maybe he's part wolf. Alrighty, now it's up to you how you want to do the finishing touches of your drawing. Maybe you want some trees back here. And if you do, you would just put straight line down, don't make them the same height. And then almost like arrows, you're going to move down and away, down and away, down and away, down and away. Moving smaller as you go to the top, little tiny arrows. And you can have some spread out, because trees in nature aren't these perfect Christmas trees that we see in the stores. These kind of pine trees, sometimes they're a little thin in areas. Sometimes they're a little wonky. So I'm going to put some moving down and away like an arrow. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Maybe I'll have another tree kind of over there. Actually, I'm going to make it taller. Again, we want that contrast. We want blackest black now. So you can press as hard as you want at this point in your drawing. And I think I want some stars. So again, if I was really working on this as long as I wanted to, I would probably really work on that silhouette to make it super, super, super crisp and really work on those shapes. But I want you to have lots of time in class to work on these shapes, and I don't want to be drawing the whole time in this video. So work on yours to the point that you're happy with your shapes and your contrast and your value, and then throw in some stars like me if you want. Maybe you want more colors than I put in my sky. Maybe you want blues, purples, and pinks, or maybe some greens as if the northern lights are up there. Have fun with your beautiful contrast, value, silhouette drawing of an animal staring up at the moon, whether you made a wolf like I did or if you chose another animal. Either way, you are now an expert on value and using contrast to bring emphasis to the subject of your artwork. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!